At my wedding, my fiancé walked down the aisle holding his pregnant nanny's daughter. Everyone was waiting for me to fall apart. Instead, I calmly turned around and walked toward his powerful uncle. "Marry me. It's a great deal for you." He took my hand in front of everyone. Deal. My wedding began. The music was loud. The flowers were fragrant. But what I saw was my fiancé, Ethan, walking down the red carpet hand in hand with another woman, Lily. She was wearing my wedding dress, the one I designed myself. I called it Sophia. The room went silent. Every guest stared. Cameras from the media swung toward me like gun barrels. Ethan picked up the microphone. His voice was steady, not a hint of shame. "Everyone, I need to be honest today. Lily is pregnant with my child. I can't let my child be born without a name." Lily rested a hand on her belly and looked straight at me. She smiled. That smile, I knew it well. It said, "I win." All eyes were on me. My parents' faces went white. The Clark family, Ethan's family, sat stone-faced. They knew. They had agreed to this. They were waiting for Sophia Reed to break down, for the bride to cry, scream, lose her mind. Ethan looked at me and sighed. "Sophia, I'm sorry, but you have to understand." "Understand?" I nodded. "Fine." I reached up, removed my veil, and gently placed it on the floor. I didn't cry. My blood felt cold. I turned around, ignoring Ethan and Lily, and walked down the long aisle in my heels. The guests stepped aside, confused about what I was about to do. I stopped at the head table. A man was sitting there with his eyes closed, as if this entire farce had nothing to do with him. Alexander Clark, Ethan's uncle, the real power behind the Clark Group. Dangerous, reclusive. I stopped in front of him. The entire room stopped breathing. I spoke clearly, my voice carrying through the hall. "Mr. Alexander Clark." He slowly opened his eyes. They were gray, cold, like a winter lake. I continued. "I've heard you need a wife to deal with next month's board vote." Dead silence. Even the music had stopped, I didn't know when. From the stage, Ethan shouted, "Sophia, are you insane? Get back here." I ignored him. I only looked at Alexander. He studied me for 3 seconds, head to toe. Then he slowly stood. He was much taller than me. His shadow fell over me. He extended his hand, not to me, but toward the priest who was completely frozen on stage. "Father," he said calmly, his voice cutting through everything, "please continue the ceremony. The bride has simply changed." Only then did he turn to me, his hand shifting toward mine. "To this one, Miss Sophia Reed." He took my hand. "Cold, firm, deal," he said, looking straight into my eyes. I tightened my grip. "Deal." On the stage, Ethan's face went paper white, like a corpse. Lily screamed, "No! You can't do this. I'm pregnant." No one paid her any attention. Every camera instantly swung away from me and locked onto Alexander and me holding hands, and the ridiculous pair still standing on the stage. Ethan charged down from the stage. His eyes were red, like a wolf whose prey had been stolen. He reached for my arm. "Sophia, what the hell are you doing? You're a woman I threw away. Who do you think you are?" He didn't touch me. Alexander stepped forward half a step, placing himself in front of me. He didn't even look at Ethan, he spoke to the air. "Watch your language," he said coolly, his voice like a blade of ice. "She is now your aunt." The word aunt hit Ethan like a thunderbolt. He froze. Every member of the Clark family changed expression. Several elders who had been seated immediately stood up. They looked at Alexander, then at me. Their expressions were complicated, but no one dared challenge him. Ethan's mother, Martha Clark, hurried over. She tried to pull Alexander aside. "Alex, this is ridiculous. Let's handle this privately. Sophia can still be the official wife. And that Lily, after the baby's born, we'll send her away and give her money." She stopped mid-sentence, because Alexander glanced at her. Martha visibly trembled. Alexander didn't move. He stayed beside me, looking at me, but addressing everyone. "This isn't a transaction," he said. "This is a wedding." Then he turned to Ethan and ordered, "Now, Ethan, greet your Aunt Sophia. That's the rule." Ethan's fists clenched so hard they cracked. Veins bulged on his neck. The cameras zoomed in even closer. Flashbulbs exploded non-stop. Martha shoved her son, her voice shaking. Say it. Do you want to destroy the entire family? Ethan stared at me. The hatred in his eyes could kill. His lips trembled for a long time before he forced out the words, Aunt Sophia. Louder. Alexander said mildly. Didn't eat today? Ethan shut his eyes and shouted. Aunt Sophia. Good. Alexander nodded. He wrapped an arm around my shoulders, gentle, but impossible to resist. The ceremony continues. Father. On the stage, Lily watched everything unravel. She watched Ethan bow his head to me. She covered her face and sobbed. Her makeup smeared, false lashes half falling off. She lost. Completely. The media went insane. I knew it. Tomorrow. No. Tonight. The internet would explode. I could already picture the headline, bride swapped at the altar, heir becomes nephew. Forced to call his ex-aunt. My dignity, Alexander restored it with a single sentence. As expected, the internet blew up. Lily was smart. She immediately made an account and posted videos of herself with morning sickness, pale, teary-eyed. She said she was just impulsive for love and never expected Sophia to be so ruthless. Using power to steal everything. She hired trolls. A lot of them. I was ripped to shreds online. Poisonous woman. Scheming slut. Trash who slept with an old man to climb up. Garbage who stole a pregnant woman's man. My best friend called me crying. Sophia, we need PR. I know reporters. I said, no need. That night, Alexander came home and handed me a tablet. On it were data files. The source of the paid trolls. Bank transfers. Chat logs between Lily and her family. Photos of her secretly meeting your ex's driver. And Ethan going on 3 TV channels playing the victim, saying he just made a mistake all men make. And that you married up out of spite. He looked at me. When do you want to strike? I looked at the vicious comments online. They insulted my parents. They mocked my company, saying it was failing and that I latched onto the Clark family to survive. I said, let the bullets fly a little longer. Alexander raised an eyebrow. Let her jump. I said, taking a sip of water. The higher she jumps, the more evidence she leaves behind, and the harder she'll crash. Someone from the Clark family called me. It was Ethan's aunt. Her tone was icy. Sophia, know when to stop. Family scandals shouldn't be aired in public. If you calm the public opinion down, the family won't treat you unfairly. I replied, all right. I understand. Then I hung up. I didn't do anything. I simply organized the evidence Alexander had given me, piece by piece, categorizing it and saving everything carefully. When Lily saw I wasn't reacting, she got even more aggressive. She started live streaming more and more, saying she was depressed, that the baby might not survive, that everything was my fault. More and more people sympathized with her. Ethan went on TV too, eyes red, saying he missed me, that everything was a misunderstanding, hinting that I was being controlled by Alexander. The storm kept growing, until 1 week later, Alexander's legal team simultaneously sent legal notices and full evidence packets to 12 major media outlets and online platforms. At the same time, the Clark Group's internal audit department quietly entered the subsidiary Ethan was in charge of. Wedding night. No romance. Alexander's study. He handed me a document. Sign it. I glanced at it. A post-nuptial agreement. But instead of protecting him from me, it transferred several properties under his name, part of his equity, and a massive trust fund directly to me. I pushed it back. I don't need this. Our marriage is a transaction. I'm clear on that. Alexander leaned against the desk. This isn't a transaction. It's a match of status. You are the mistress of the Clark family. Your position requires corresponding protection, and protection is also a weapon. A weapon? He turned on the computer and pushed the screen toward me. Look at this. It was the cash flow from a small joint project between my father's company and the Clark Group. Ethan was in charge of it. Payments were listed one by one, vague purposes, all eventually flowing into several shell companies. My father's company had fronted a lot of the money. Its cash flow was close to breaking. My hands went cold. He's been bleeding my father's company dry? It used to be minor. In the last 6 months, it escalated. Alexander said coldly. He wanted to drag your father down and force your family to become completely dependent on him. He looked straight at me. Now you have 2 options. 1. Use what I'm giving you to help your father's company survive and take back control. 2. I deal with Ethan directly. but the cooperation may end. The losses your father's company has already suffered won't disappear, and recovery will take time. The choice is yours, Sophia, he said. You're the lady of the house, not a decoration. I looked at the agreement. It was thick. It wasn't just money. It was status. It was leverage. It was the capital for revenge. And it was the first real blade he had placed in my hand. I picked up the pen. I choose option 1. I signed my name on the document. Sophia Clark. The equity transfer took effect immediately. I became a shareholder of a major Clark Group subsidiary, with 1 vote on the board. Clark Group board meeting. A massive round table. As a new shareholder, I attended for the first time. Ethan was there too. When he saw me, his eyes looked like they wanted to tear me apart. His father, old Mr. Clark, struck first. He aimed straight at my father's company. Reed Company has poor management and low creditworthiness. I propose we immediately terminate all cooperation to avoid losses to the group. He stared at me, especially considering the moral issues of the family involved in this alliance. The risks are extremely high. All the directors looked at me. They were waiting for me to cry or defend myself. I opened the folder in front of me, pulled out several pages, and had my assistant distribute them. This is a detailed report on the flow of funds over the past 3 years between Reed Company and the projects managed by Mr. Ethan Clark, I said calmly. Please look at page 3, the sections marked in red. The directors lowered their heads to read. Ethan's father frowned. Ethan's face changed. A senior director suddenly looked up. What's this $50 million in abnormal expenses? It's labeled market expansion, but the recipients are companies no one's ever heard of. Another director slammed the table. Ethan, explain yourself. Ethan stood up, sweat breaking out on his forehead. This is normal business practice. Some channels need to stay discreet. I cut him off. Whether it's normal or not, a third-party audit will tell us. I propose we immediately launch an independent audit of all projects managed by Ethan Clark. Ethan shouted. Sophia, you're slandering me. This is revenge. Enough. Alexander finally spoke. He hadn't said a word until now. Just 2 words, and the room went silent. He twirled the pen in his hand and looked around the table. I second Sophia Clark's proposal. Independent audit. Effective immediately. Ethan's father panicked. Alex, this is family business. We can handle it privately. This is the boardroom, Alexander said, his gaze sweeping over him. Only business matters here. Ethan collapsed back into his chair, like his bones had been pulled out. The meeting was suspended. Directors whispered among themselves, their looks toward Ethan and his father filled with suspicion and coldness. For the first time, when Ethan looked at me, there was no hatred in his eyes, only fear. It was like he was finally realizing something was very wrong. The preliminary audit report came out quickly. The problems were serious. At the second board meeting, the atmosphere was even heavier. Ethan and his father looked like they were sitting on a volcano. This time, I didn't present the audit report. I presented something else. A DNA test report. Sample sources: Ethan, and amniotic fluid from the child in Lily's womb. Before we discuss commercial misconduct, I said as I slid copies across the table, perhaps we should first clarify whether the biological child that Mr. Ethan Clark destroyed his engagement and wedding for actually belongs to him. The room exploded. What? That child isn't Ethan's? Ethan snatched the report, his eyes bulging. He read it once, then again. His hands shook uncontrollably. Impossible. This is impossible. Lily, he suddenly looked up, his bloodshot eyes fixed on me. You forged this, Sophia. You poisonous woman. I smiled and picked up the remote. Turning on the screen, photos appeared. Then a blurry but recognizable video. Lily, embracing and kissing another man in a garage. That man was Ethan's private driver. The timestamp showed it was during the period when she and Ethan were supposedly madly in love. Do you want me to invite the child's real father here? I asked. Yeah. Ethan completely broke down. He flipped the table and roared like a wild animal. Lily was also invited into the meeting room. She tried to fake fainting. Alexander pressed the call button. Security stood by the door. If she faints, call an ambulance, he said calmly. When she wakes up, we continue. One director waved his hand in disgust. Call the police. This is fraud, embezzlement, and this kind of scandal on top of it. Ethan's mother screamed and actually fainted. The meeting room descended into chaos. Ethan pointed at Lily, crying and laughing at the same time. "You bitch! You lied to me! You ruined me!" Lily curled up in the corner, her face covered in tears. This time, they weren't fake. Alexander delivered the final verdict, effective immediately. Ethan Clark is relieved of all duties. He will be subject to internal investigation and referred to judicial authorities. All financial support from the Clark Family Trust is suspended. His father failed in oversight and will temporarily step away from core management. Then he looked at me. Sophia Clark, shareholder, will temporarily take over the relevant business and cooperate with the audit. Ethan was finished. His career, his reputation, his so-called love, all of it turned into a joke. Only a short time after the wedding he thought he had already won. The outcome was announced quickly. Ethan didn't go to prison, not yet. The amounts involved and some evidence were still going through formal procedures. But the Clark family had abandoned him. He was exiled. The group had a half-dead mining project in Africa, years of losses, brutal conditions. Ethan was shoved over there, given a hollow title with no real power. All his credit cards and accounts were frozen. His mansion and sports cars were repossessed. The brothers and friends who used to flatter him suddenly couldn't be reached. No one invited him out anymore. Media headlines shifted overnight. Clark family disowns Ethan, heir allegedly banished to Africa over financial scandal and moral failings. He fell straight from the clouds into the mud. I said nothing. I didn't kick him while he was down. And I didn't pretend to be magnanimous either. Alexander was colder than anyone. He directly cut off Ethan's parents' access to large withdrawals from the family trust. Ethan's mother, Martha, came to see me once, waiting downstairs at my office. She looked 10 years older, begging me to spare her son. I said calmly, "I didn't do this. The rules did. And the law." She called me vicious. I had security escort her away. Lily was sent off somewhere. I don't know where. She never appeared in front of us again. Once, in an internal family email, I saw a report from the Africa project mentioning that Ethan wasn't adapting well. He'd gotten sick and wanted to be transferred back. Alexander replied with a single word, "No." That was when Ethan finally understood. He started emailing me like a madman, begging, apologizing, saying he was wrong, saying Lily had deceived him, saying the one he really loved was me. I didn't read a single one. I marked them all as spam. He was finished. Not because I wanted him finished, but because the road he chose ended at a cliff. Lily disappeared, but her family didn't. They had a small company that survived by clinging to the Clark family and various connections. Now the pillar they leaned on had collapsed. I didn't need to step in. Alexander's assistant handled it. All Clark Group cooperation with Lily's family company was terminated. Audits uncovered serious quality issues in their past supplies, and compensation claims were filed. Banks got wind of it and began calling in loans. Former partners who once did them favors all canceled contracts. In less than a month, Lily's family company went bankrupt and into liquidation. Her mother blocked me downstairs at the apartment where I used to live before the wedding. She knelt and cried, begging me to leave them a way out. Her brother was worse. He went online ranting about us abusing power, threatening to expose us. His post hadn't even had time to spread before Alexander's lawyer's letter arrived: defamation, astronomical damages. The post vanished instantly. His account was deleted. The last time I saw Lily's mother, I said only 2 things. "The wedding dress your daughter stole, I spent 3 months sewing it myself, stitch by stitch. And all those contracts your family got over the years by sucking my blood, it's time to spit them back out." I turned and left. Security stopped her from chasing me. A legal order barred them from coming within 100 meters of my home or workplace. The media never reported on that family again. It was as if they had never existed. I officially took over the business recovered from Ethan. A total mess. It was full of Ethan's cronies, people on the payroll who did nothing. I held my first department meeting and said only 3 things. First, all positions would be re-evaluated. Work reports due in 3 days. Second, all project contracts and expense claims from the past 3 years would be fully reviewed. Third, anyone who didn't accept this could take severance and leave now. Half the department left, including 2 veterans who pointed at my face and said I'd risen by sleeping with a man. I didn't even look up. Safe travels. Then I personally went out to meet clients, renegotiate contracts. I worked overtime, stared at data, Learned mining industry knowledge I'd never dealt with before. Sometimes Alexander came home late and saw me still in the study, hunched over my laptop. He'd quietly set down a cup of coffee and leave without a word. 4 months later, I managed to secure a new local partner for that African disaster of a project and found a cheaper logistics solution. We stopped the bleeding. It still wasn't profitable, but the numbers looked much better. At the board meeting, the old directors who had once questioned me stayed silent. The capital market is brutally honest. The subsidiary I was responsible for stabilized and even ticked upward. A business article came out with the headline, "Iron-handed director Sophia Clark, cleaning up a disaster, outperforming her predecessor." Some of Ethan's former subordinates quietly reached out, hoping to come back. I replied, "The company currently has no hiring plans." They regretted it. Too late. In a public interview, Alexander was asked about me. He said lightly, "Sophia's abilities speak for themselves." At the Clark Group, the capable rise. I was no longer Ethan's unlucky ex-fiancé, and I wasn't Sophia who married up. I was Sophia Clark, a director of the Clark Group. I was standing firm on my own heels. At a Clark family charity gala, a room full of elites, Ethan was back. From Africa. He was thinner, darker, the light gone from his eyes. His parents brought him, hoping for one last chance. He saw me. I was at the center of the crowd. Alexander stood beside me. Several key directors were talking with me. He waited a long time, finally finding a moment when I was alone. He rushed over and blocked me. "Sophia," his voice was hoarse, his eyes bloodshot. "I was wrong. I really was wrong. I was blinded. For the sake of the 10 years we had, please forgive me. Help me. Talk to my uncle for me. Let me come back. I'll start from the bottom if I have to." As he spoke, he actually raised his hand and slapped himself hard. The sound was sharp. People nearby looked over. I took a step back, widening the distance, like stepping away from trash. "Mr. Ethan Clark," I said clearly, "there is no past between us. Only a lesson. Please have some self-respect." He froze, then became agitated. "You still hate me, don't you? You're getting revenge. You're enjoying this. Sophia, you still care about me, otherwise you wouldn't treat me like this." I looked at him like he was a stranger telling a bad joke. "You're mistaken," I said slowly. "I don't hate you, and I'm not taking revenge. I simply don't see you at all. You're not worth it." He stiffened. His eyes went empty, as if the last thing holding him up had shattered. "What are you doing here?" Alexander's voice cut in. He walked over, his hand naturally resting at my lower back. He looked at Ethan, who seemed to have lost his soul, and said calmly, "Forgot the rules again? Address her." Ethan stared blankly at him, then at me. His lips trembled under Alexander's icy gaze. He finally, like a puppet, forced out that humiliating title. "Aunt Sophia." Alexander nodded. "Good. Stay away from your aunt." Security. 2 guards stepped forward and, politely but firmly, escorted the hollow-eyed Ethan out of the venue. I lifted my glass and took a sip. The wine was sweet. The last knot in my heart was gone. The line had been cleanly cut. I was looking for an old map in Alexander's study and opened a very heavy drawer. I didn't find the map. I found an old photo album. On impulse, I opened it. Inside were many old photos, Alexander when he was younger, family events, formal gatherings, and then I saw myself. A photo from my college speech competition. I was wearing a cheap dress, but my eyes were bright. A newspaper clipping about my first design award at my first job, and then a photo taken outside my father's company. I was walking with my head down, looking exhausted and anxious. The timestamp showed it was from the period when Ethan had started sabotaging my dad's business. There were many photos, all taken from far away, as if shot secretly. On the last page, there was only one photo, 10 years ago, at a Clark Group-sponsored Young Entrepreneurs Cocktail event. In the corner, I was holding a glass of juice, standing timidly. On the other side of the frame, a much younger Alexander was moving through the crowd, his gaze directed toward me. On the back of the photo was a single line, written lightly in Alexander's handwriting, "She deserves the spotlight." My hands trembled as I held the album. "Did you find it?" Alexander's voice came from the doorway. I looked up at him. He saw what I was holding, paused, then walked over. I wanted to ask something, but didn't know how to begin. He took the album from my hands and closed it. No embarrassment. No agitation. 10 years ago, I saw you at that reception, he said calmly, as if talking about someone else. You were nervous, but when you explained your eco-friendly packaging design to the judges, there was light in your eyes. After that, I heard about you occasionally. I knew you fell in love, got engaged to Ethan. I could tell Ethan wasn't a good match, but that was your choice. All I could do was watch, until he went too far and started targeting your father's company. I gathered evidence, planning to deal with him through business channels if necessary, but I had no right to interfere in your feelings. On the wedding day, I only attended for the sake of family appearances. I kept my eyes closed. I didn't want to watch that farce. He looked at me, his gray eyes were deep, and then you walked over and asked me if I needed a wife. That wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision, Sophia. It was an opportunity one had waited for a long time, an opportunity to stand beside you openly, to crush the people who hurt you, and to give you back what you deserved. He lifted his hand and gently brushed the corner of my eye. Only then did I realize I was crying. I'm not a savior, he said softly. I'm just a man who saw your light 10 years ago and arrived far too late. He lowered his head and kissed my forehead, restrained and reverent. You were my only choice. You always were. My world tilted in that moment. It wasn't a transaction. It wasn't revenge. It was being quietly protected by someone for 10 years. And I had only just found out. Once the truth came out, everything else fell into place. Alexander no longer hid his trust or support. He gave me greater authority. Together, we cleaned out the rot in the Clark family. Those older relatives who had once tacitly approved Ethan's humiliation of me, and the side branches that had undermined us in secret under Alexander's iron hand and my increasingly mature business tactics. They fell silent one by one and withdrew from the core circle. Ethan's parents handed over their last bits of real power, kept only basic living allowances from the family trust, and went abroad to recuperate. In reality, they were exiled. The Clark group completed a full power reshuffle. Alexander became the undisputed leader, and Sophia Clark, was not only his wife, but a core board partner with a decisive vote. New rules were established. Transparent, strict, ability-driven. No one dared call me a decorative wife anymore. No one dared bring up Ethan in front of me again. I wasn't a woman who married into a powerful family. I was someone who, together with Alexander, had conquered a new version of this business empire. In the business world, people referred to us as the Clarks. The tone carried respect and a hint of awe. My position no longer depended on marriage. It was rooted in my ability and in partnership. That was what it meant to truly stand firm. A deep-dive financial documentary aired, meticulously tracing the entire arc, from the Clark wedding scandal to the power transition. The evidence chain was airtight: Lily's fraud, Ethan's embezzlement and ethical collapse, my silence and counterstrike, Alexander's long game, and my subsequent business performance. Public opinion fully reversed. Lily was labeled a professional emotional scammer. Ethan became a textbook case of a morally bankrupt, incompetent second-generation heir. And Sophia Clark, was framed as a modern female comeback blueprint and a woman who earned respect through capability. Several influencers who had attacked me the hardest quietly deleted posts or published long apologies. I glanced at them. I didn't reply. I didn't accept. My best friend asked, "Doesn't it still bother you? Don't you want to slap them back?" I shook my head. No need. When you're standing on the mountaintop, you can't hear or see the noise at the base. That night, Alexander and I were in the study. I slid a proposal across the desk. It outlined a plan to integrate the remaining high-quality assets of my father's company with a new tech sector I was bullish on, to form an independent investment fund. "I want to do this," I said, "in my own name. I'll handle part of the funding myself. Part would be early-stage investment from the group, but I'll repay it at the highest interest rate. Check the risk analysis." Alexander read it carefully, then looked up at me with a smile in his eyes. "The plan is solid. Risks are controllable. The group can invest. Interest at the lowest commercial rate." "No," I said firmly. "It has to be the highest. This is business." He laughed, genuinely. "All right. Your call, Boss Sophia." We argued like true partners, negotiated, and eventually landed on a solution both of us were satisfied with. Outsiders called us a power couple, but I knew it wasn't just power. It was late-night work followed by simple shared meals. It was the warm milk he silently handed me when he saw I was exhausted. It was me hugging him from behind when I caught him secretly looking at my old photos. We were independent, yet interdependent. No blind romance. No power struggles. Healthy. Stable. Secure. Years later, the Clark Group annual gala, a grand celebration. Alexander and I sat in the main seats. Thousands of employees, partners, and elites filled the room. I wore a custom gown and delivered my speech with ease. Thunderous applause followed. No one remembered Ethan anymore. He was still at some fringe African project, rumored to be drinking heavily, his health failing. His name had long been pushed to the most insignificant corner of the Clark family roster. Lily had vanished completely. Some said she was a waitress in another state, married to a bad-tempered truck driver. My parents' company had long since recovered and was thriving. My father often said it was thanks to my ruthlessness back then. After my speech, Alexander took my hand beneath the table. I smiled at him. The spotlight was bright, but I was steady. I had everything I once dreamed of: dignity, career, love, power. What Ethan lost wasn't just a wedding or a fiancé. He lost me, Sophia, the life he could have shared and shattered with his own hands. The life I live now is brilliant, solid, and powerful. I didn't forgive, but I no longer needed to hate, because my gaze was already fixed on what lay ahead, higher ground. Applause surged like a tide. My life didn't just turn around. It flipped the board completely, and it felt incredible.